Hi, I'm David Gordon. I'm a 5th grade teacher and have been teaching 5th grade for about 20 years now. So today we are going to look at adding and subtracting unlike denominators. Before this video, you should have done a video on simplifying fractions and also finding the LCM, or least common multiple. I'll talk about those a little bit today, but today's lesson will basically be adding unlike denominators. So there are some steps you need to do when adding unlike denominators. By unlike denominators, I mean the bottom number here is not the same. The first thing you need to do is find the LCM, or least common multiple. For example, if I were to count by threes, 3, 6, 9, 12, and then I count by sixes, 6, 12, 18, I ask myself, what's the first number that they both share or have in common? Well, if I say 3, 6, the first number they have in common is actually the 6. So that's the first thing I would want to do, is find the common denominator. Then I need to make equivalent fractions. So for example, I said the 6 would work as a denominator. I make an equivalent fraction, and here I multiply by 2 to make this a 6. I multiply by 2 here and make that a 4. Here it's times 1, so that whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. That becomes 1. So I now have equivalent fractions. Then I either add or subtract based on the numerators. So 4 plus 1 is 5. And the denominator is just telling me the size, so I don't add it. I just bring it down. So I now have 5/6. Then I have to ask myself, can I simplify this? And in this case, I cannot, because my numerator is a prime number and the denominator is not a multiple of that prime. Okay? So that's, in a nutshell, the way that you would add or subtract unlike denominators. Now, let's go over some rules that I teach my kids when adding or subtracting unlike denominators. The first rule is, can the smallest number divide evenly into the larger number? So I want to ask myself, can my small denominator, because they're two different numbers, can my small denominator go into the larger one? So if you look over here at the one we did first, I ask myself, can the 3 go into the 6? And it can. So I now use the 6. What I then do is make an equivalent fraction. I have to, whatever I do to the bottom, I need to do to the top, or whatever I do to the denominator, I need to do to the numerator. This was times 1. Basically, it just moved over. I'm using the same fraction over there. Here, though, I changed the 3 to a 6. And it really helps to know your multiplication tables, because you use a lot of multiplication in fractions. Here, I know I multiplied by 2 to make that a 6. So again, whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator. So that was multiplied by 2. This will be multiplied by 2. I now have 4. And then I add. 4 plus 1 is 5. And I bring down my denominator, and I have 5/6. And again, that is simplified. Okay? Now let's go to rule number 2 that I want my students to think about when they're finding the common denominator. So let's say you cannot divide the smaller number into the bigger number. Okay? So I ask myself, what is the LCM? And in the other lesson, you would know that that's the least common multiple. Again, if I count by sixes, in this example, I would go 6, 12, 18, 24, and here I go 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24. So what is the first number they have in common? Stacy, do you know what number 6 and 4 have in common?
24.
24. Okay? So, they also have a common denominator of 12. So we'll use 12 for right now. So, I will get to the 24 in just a minute. So whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. Here, I multiplied by 2, so I also need to multiply by 2. Here, I multiplied by 3, so here, I multiply by 3. So 1 times 3 is 3. I can now add these. 2 plus 3 is 5. And again, I just bring down my denominator, and I have 5/12. Now, let's go back to her 24 that she suggested. That has to do with rule number 3 over here. If you see nothing else, just multiply the numbers together and simplify if needed. So in other words, if your denominators are unlike, they're different, and you don't see any common denominator, you may always multiply them together. Okay, so let's take a look at this one over here, number 2 again. We had a denominator of 6 and 4. So let's just multiply them together. We will have 24. That's our new denominator, following rule number 3. If you see nothing else, just multiply them together. So multiply 6 times 4 is 24. So, for sake of looking at this easily, I'm going to go, what did I multiply the 6 by to make the 24? It's times 4. And so whatever I do to the bottom, I do to the top. 1 times 4 is 4. Here, what did I multiply 6 by to get, 4 by to get 24? Obviously it's 6 times 6. So again, I do the same to the top. 1 times 6 is 6. Now, again, I add the numerator, and that will be 10/24. Okay? I've now added or subtracted my numerators. Now I get to step number 4, which is simplify. Can I simplify 10/24? Stacy, can I simplify 10/24?
Yeah.
Yes, I can. And I can simplify because they're both even numbers, right? So, I have 10/24. I can divide both by 2 because they are even numbers. 10 divided by 2 equals 5. 24 divided by 2 equals 12. Look at that. It's the same number I had originally. So, let's go back to rule number 3. If you see nothing else, just multiply the numbers together and simplify if needed. So even though I didn't see the 12, for example, that 6 and 4 can, that's the LCM. The LCM, or least common multiple of 6 and 4, is 12. If I don't see that, I just can multiply the 6 times 4, get my new denominator, and then work through the problem and add it up. But I have to be careful to check the last step, simplifying. Once I simplify, then I should have the same answer as using the least common multiple. There you go.